Thank you very much, Eva. And I would like to express my sincere thanks to organizer of this conference, as well as my former professor, Professor Pezovic, for connecting me to this conference. And I have to say congratulations that we are now at the last session of the conference. And I will not take you so much time, I promise. Yeah, as Professor Huyen Doan yesterday stated that ports are crucial players in maritime. And I am here today and I would like to talk to you about legal policy related to investment in seaport infrastructure in Vietnam, a developing country in Asia Pacific, and it's also my home country. So I'm going to give you a very brief information about Vietnam's recent advancements in seaport system and the legal policy related to investment in seaport infrastructure in Vietnam. And the last part of my presentation, I would like to give you some information about Vietnam's comprehensive master plan of seaport system by 2030 and vision to 2050. Yeah, we start with some recent advancements in seaport system that Vietnam has achieved. I would like to invite you to have a look at the map. And yeah, you will see the location of Vietnam in the region. Yeah, it's located in Southeast Asia, and it has a long coastline with more than 3,000 kilometers from the north to the south. And Vietnam Sea is totally within the area of the South China Sea. And on the map, you can also see the connection between Vietnam and international shipping routes. And I can give you some information that we have established its connections. We have 7 domestic routes and 25 international routes, including intra-Asian routes and long-distance routes to North America and Europe. Yeah, and here on the map, you can see the current seaport system of Vietnam. Yeah, so far we have 34 ports from the north and the south, and they are classified in 5 clusters. And the total length of wharf bridges is 96 kilometers. And here you can see some indicators showing the capacity of Vietnamese ports. And here you can see some indicators about goods transported through seaports of Vietnam in the period between 2015 and 2023. And there is a tendency that the expanding of goods volume that transported through seaports of Vietnam in the years. And now I'm going to give you some information about investment capital for seaports infrastructure. And I especially draw attention of Professor Thomas, who told me only this week that he has some $1 million that want to invest in something. And here, Professor Thomas, that's what you really need to see. Okay, from 2011 to 2020, investment capital that already invested in seaport infrastructure in Vietnam is more than $8 billion, and it's accounted for more than 20% of total investment capital for transportation infrastructure in Vietnam. And here's the needs for investment capital to 2030. The investment capital needed for seaport infrastructure is more than 14 billion US dollar. So Professor Thomas, there's still a good room for development in seaport infrastructure in Vietnam, and you can consider some opportunities. Okay, now we are going to see some legal policies related to investment in seaport infrastructure. And I'm going to tell you about investment incentives for investment in seaport infrastructure and government guarantees for implementation of projects in seaport infrastructure. And the last thing is about market access conditions. I have to say that seaports play an important role in the economic development of Vietnam, as well as national security, because we are a coastal land and we have a very long coastal line from the north to the south. So the government of Vietnam, they have a policy to encourage private investor to invest in seaports infrastructure. And to encourage and to attract private investment in seaport infrastructure, the government provides some kind of investment incentives for investors who invest in port infrastructure. And investment incentives can be corporate income tax incentives, like an exemption or reduction of corporate income tax in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And exemption of import tax with regard to importation of materials or equipment that cannot be domestically bought. And investment incentives could be land rental or land tariff incentives, like exemption or reduction of land rental or land tariff. In addition to investment incentives, the government also provides some kind of guarantees for investment implementation of project in seaports infrastructure. And so guarantees could be a promise of the government in supporting the investor in foreign currency conversion for international purchase of goods, materials, or services. And government guarantee can also be a special financial regime that the government grants to the project. For example, a financial contribution from the government, or a support in financing arrangement like a kind of bank loan guarantee. And land use incentives, for example, investor may have a long term of land use like 30 years or 50 years, or even maximum time is 70 years. Yeah, and other supports like site clearance or preparing infrastructure surrounding the project area. Okay, now I'm going to tell about market access conditions. And it is quite funny that there's the differences between the international investment treaties to which Vietnam is a party and domestic law with regard to market access conditions applicable to foreigners in the sector of port infrastructure. And that difference leads to a quite interesting consequence that I'm going to tell you later on. Now we start with international treaties to which Vietnam is a party. And have to tell you that Vietnam has been a member of the World Trade Organization since 2007. But at the time of negotiations for WTO membership, Vietnam didn't negotiate anything related to investment sectors in seaport infrastructure. It means Vietnam reserves the right to adopt and maintain any measures that related to seaport infrastructure. And in some free trade agreement of Vietnam, like the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, Vietnam keeps the investment sector of seaport infrastructure in an annex regarding exemption for Vietnam on national treatment. Yeah, you can have a look here. Here is the annex of EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. And this is the annex on exemption for Vietnam on national treatments. And this is read that Vietnam may adopt or maintain any measure with respect to operation and management of reports, seaports, and airports. And the similar thing can be found. Yeah, here you can see the sector that Vietnam reserves the rights is river ports, seaports, airports, construction, operation, and management. It read that Vietnam reserves the right to adopt or maintain any measure with respect to the construction, operation, and management of seaports. Yeah. So, in general, Vietnam reserves the right to adopt and maintain any measures with regards to construction, management, and operation of seaport. But in the domestic law of Vietnam, there's no specific conditions applicable to foreigners with regard to construction, operation, and management of seaports. Just now, in fact, the foreign investor can invest in this sector with the same treatments as domestic investor. And there's only one requirement that applicable to both domestic and foreign investor, that is a new construction investment project in seaports and seaports areas with an investment capital of 93.5 million US dollars or more, are subject to approval of the Prime Minister. So that when a foreign investor and also a domestic investor, if they have investment project in seaports infrastructure with the investment capital scale that is the 93.5 million US dollar and more, they need to obtain an approval of the Prime Minister before they start the project. There's no strict discrimination between domestic investor and foreign investor. Yes, that is regulation, but in practice, when the government authorities, they consider investment admission, they need to consider about the local, the location of the project. Like if the project area is very close to military base or navy base, so they would be very reluctant to admit investment made by foreign investor. For example, yeah, you can see here a number of ports in Vietnam that owned and operated by foreign investor. And normally, ports that owned and operated by foreign investor, normally they have not in some location that's sensitive about national security. Now, the last part of my presentation, I'm going to tell you about Vietnam's comprehensive master plan of seaport system by 2030 and vision to 2050. Our goals by 2030, in 2021, the Prime Minister of Vietnam issued a decision approving the master plan for development of Vietnam's seaport system in the period of 2021 and 2030 with a vision to 2050. And in the master plan, we expected that we could develop the seaport system to handle up to around 1,500 million tons of cargo and up to 10 million passengers per year by 2030. And as the government also gives the priority to development of international gateway ports and plan the development of large-scale ports serving economic zones and industrial parks, ports on island districts to support socio-economic development linked to national defense, security, and sovereignty. Vision to 2050. Vietnam is ambitious to become a strong maritime nation and a developed high-income country with a modern seaport system, meeting global standards, meeting green port criteria. Yeah, and that's what we expect, and we are trying hard to reach that objectives. Here you can see some targets that some objectives, some detailed objectives that we would like to achieve by 2030. In general, we still keep 5 clusters of ports, but we are trying to increase the capacities of every port. And here you can see the expected objective, like cargo volume of each port cluster. And especially, the government decided to upgrade 2 ports, one in the north and one in the south, that you can see here in the map with the red color. The government now trying to upgrade 2 ports into special ports so that they can extend the port and increase the capacity of the ports, because the 2 ports are the biggest and the most important ports in Vietnam. In conclusion, investment in seaport infrastructure in Vietnam is highly encouraged, and the government provides different kinds of investment incentive and government guarantee to attract and support investors investing in seaport infrastructure. Foreign investors enjoy the same treatments as domestic investors when they invest in port infrastructure in Vietnam. And the last, the room for development of seaport infrastructure in Vietnam is large, as Vietnam has many geographical advantages and is doing its best to become a strong maritime country in the future. Thank you for listening.